Media communications, tips to succeed. Let's continue our brief course on communication. Today we will look at some useful recommendations and tips for communicating with media environment. Whether you like it or not, but we need media to communicate to as many people as we need. Media is a crucial tool for communication. How to put our story, our news, or just our comment or information into media agenda? To answer this question, we need to first ask, what do journalists want? Except glory and money, of course. A journalist wants a good piece of information, a good piece of story that would be interesting or useful for their audience. People in general read news or watch them to make their life easier and better, or to have just fun. If we want reporters to take our news, we need to do their job as much as possible. You may ask why we need this. Because press people are always out of time. They are always on time pressure. And they are always in need of fresh and sound news story. So let's make their life easier. What information should we give to press people? Give them the information they can use to make a full story. Give them a piece of news, a fact, an evidence, a people, an expert and a background. Just explain why this news is important. To start, we need to understand the poles where news live. These poles are interesting or useful. So your information should be either useful or interesting. If information is useful, it is related to everybody and to everyday routine of ordinary people. For example, governments raised the gas tariffs for households, and it is related to everybody because everybody wants to know how the spending structure will be changed. And naturally, this is the mainstream topic. But news also live in other different opposite pole. This pole is interesting, entertaining. This is information about outstanding people, famous people, celebrities, or some extraordinary event. It could be a historical event that breaks the stereotypes. It doesn't relate to our everyday routine, but it is entertaining and astonishing. For example, recently, nearly all global media were reporting about a train packed with Nazi treasures found in tunnel in Poland. This information has nothing to do with our everyday issues, but it is uncommon. It relates to our past and it deconstructs the stereotype of lost Nazi gold. Whether you like it or not, but media often use the rule of several principles: sensations, love, tears, sex and scandals. Media outlets use rather our emotions than reason. Emotional dressing is very important for media. First of all, media is built around the human relations. And human relations are not pure facts. Human relations are about emotions. Secondly, news are selected by human beings, editors, and they are driven by emotions also. Let's look at an editor. He or she is monitoring a lot of news every day, and he or she needs to select some news to put into agenda. The eye of an editor will stay rather on emotional news than on just neutral one. So pack your information into emotional dressing and you will gain the attention of an editor. The same rule works for the interviews or comments. Be aware that journalists will not use all your speech. They will select some pieces and they will prefer emotional and memorable words rather than dull sentences. So during the press conference or giving interview, just select your key idea and stress it by emotional wording. Use joke or striking quotation from a famous person or book or a movie, or use a fancy metaphor. This will draw attention of journalists and your audience. And remember that only 20 seconds will be included into news piece, not your whole speech. unless you are a president or a prime minister of a country. This is the technical regulation of so-called soundbite. So it is important to train and to exercise to talk brightly and shortly, with so-called superphrase. Another rule is to talk simply. The main task of journalists is to explain complex subject to their audience. They need to make things understandable. Let's help them in it. First, we need to avoid giving them a lot of facts, figures, citations, and so on. We need to select the key issue and develop it. This is like in advertisement. If you have to promote a car, you can't talk about all features simultaneously, about luxury, about being environmental friendly, and so on. The experts in advertisement will select the key feature and build the story around this one key feature. So follow this rule when you are preparing something for media. Also, avoid too specialized language in your materials. You should explain everything in clear words. It is useful exercise how to explain a complex subject to ordinary people. This is their advice from journalistic community. Just imagine that you are talking to your grandmother. Try to explain every complex subject to your grandmother. It could be easily done. You could explain everything. You could explain the financial crisis, the rise of populistic political movements in Europe, and so on. And your grandmother will understand you. So your target audience will understand you also. Just try to be clear. Never fear to look simple. A much bigger sin is to be boring and dull. And finally, let's talk about being brief. We live in the age of huge flows of information, in age of massive information noise. Huge long reads are the privileges of Pulitzer winners or Nobel Prize winners. If you are not these guys, so try to be brief and try to talk on the matter. And it is possible. Yes, it requires some efforts, but a short and brief text could motivate and also be informative. And brief text also could explain very complicated issue. Just put some efforts to be brief. And finally, there is no room for fear in communication. Never be afraid to cross the line. Think out of the box. Be fearless and walk on thin ice. This is the only way to deliver your message to your target audience. And mix the ingredients like chef does. Serve some new and delicious, some fusion meal. Bon voyage! Please pay attention that you can find some additional and useful materials to this course below the video.